peace in 3, 2, 1.
The day I found out my father has Alzheimer's, I went to the Lemonheads concert anyway. I stood in the last row analyzing the backs of people's heads, correlating their hairstyles with whether they still had healthy parents. One 30-something's dispassionate mop implied that his mother and father were retired and ran monthly 5Ks together, holding hands while they crossed the finish line. Fuck him, I frowned. The carefree cowlick on the crown of a hipster's head suggested she enjoyed not only 2 parents, but also a grandparent she only visited on major holidays. Ungrateful bitch, I squinted. Then I spotted a young woman whose frizz and loose, sorrowful curls indicated that her father, too, crinkled inside the cruel fist of a degenerative terminal disease. I wanted to whoop and high-five her for being a member of an exclusive bereavement club these other spoiled brats couldn't begin to understand. Shortly after the diagnosis, I dreamed that my parents were in their 20s. While they wandered through a field of wildflowers, I snapped photographs of them in the nude. The next night, I dreamed my father and I stood at a desk filled with old pictures. The wind opened the drawers, scattering the images everywhere. "I don't want to grow up!" I shouted. "But you've got to," Daddy answered. My father handled the diagnosis better than anyone. When faced with the obligatory "How are you?" he responded with, "I'm doing great, just can't remember shit." His answer reminded me of fat people who grab a hunk of their inner tube and laugh about joining Jenny Craig as though their corpulence didn't haunt them. My father's furrowed brow gave away the fear he tried to hide with humor. Every time his eyebrows wrinkled, I imagined an M16 rifle blasting in his mind. He might have come out of the Vietnam War alive, but no one survives Alzheimer's. I made jokes to mask my devastation as well. I howled and spanked my thighs when my father mistook one of the dog's vegan strips for a slice of bacon and a bowl of deviled egg stuffing for his breakfast. Appreciated his sudden candor when he called his best friend's first wife a whore and giggled at his insistence on eating varsity hot dogs for every meal. But hey, he doesn't remember eating there yesterday, but Just this morning, my parents and sister walked the dogs, and my father grew confused by a Save the Tatas bumper sticker, a well-known slogan he would have recognized a couple years ago. "What's a Tata?" he asked. "I'll tell you later," my conservative mother whispered. However, Daddy wouldn't drop the subject. "When we get home, can we get a Tata? Maybe we can get Bobbin a Tata too." "Robert," my mother hissed, "Tatas are boobies." Usually the deterioration of my father's vocabulary makes me cackle, but on the wrong day I'll burst into a sob. Imagine a complex ice sculpture of my father slowly melting, all the details that make him my daddy dripping off until the sculpture becomes a basic template for a man. That's what Alzheimer's does to people. Early on, my father lost his concept of time. "Is today Christmas?" he inquired when I called the house to wish everyone a Happy New Year. He didn't recall receiving a Keurig coffee maker from my husband and me or giving me away at my wedding the month before. At first, I confused his attitude with apathy, but how can he get riled up about events he has no idea occurred? He jumped out of a helicopter and got stuck in the air somewhere in 2010. To be fair, possessing a wonky short-term memory bothered my father at first. When my mother swore he already had seen the movie Lincoln in the theater twice, he shrugged, laughed, and looked at his fingernails, eyebrows crumpling. An M16 rifle rattled inside his tangled hippocampus. Imagine the ice sculpture's brain warping into half its original size. In addition to memory and an understanding of time and place, my father's sense of discretion dissolved. For a while, every afternoon, he sat at the family's desktop computer watching low-quality porn, a Latina booty undulating in a slow motion across the screen. I know, it's bad, he admitted when my sister walked in on him. My mother seemed shocked by his sudden interest in porn, unaware he's been consuming it all along, but used to exit off with a quick whip of his index finger. These days, he's too slow or doesn't care or doesn't know why he should care. Around this time last year, I watched my father clutch my mother's hip for the final time with a husband's masculinity and touch. Now he clings to her like a child. While on vacation, my parents dragged floats into the ocean and he wouldn't let go of her foot, kind of how I wouldn't let go of his thigh the first time I dipped a toe in the Gulf of Mexico. Imagine the ice sculpture's brain trickling down the shoulders. While still employed, my father called his secretary 5 times a day to ask the same question and obsessively checked with his financial advisor about whether his forced retirement made monetary sense. Those M16 rifles and helicopter rotor blades exploded throughout his subconscious. In the 2 years since my father's diagnosis, his intense gaze has softened into what I call Alzheimer's stare. He doesn't worry about work, retirement, or money anymore. The arch of his eyebrows has retreated into a straight, halcyon line. I often wonder what he thinks about when wearing that tranquil expression and envision how the landscape of his brain has changed from a smoking battleground to a blank canvas that I wish I could say were splattered with wine and doves. Imagine the ice sculpture's face sinking into a blob. Grooming no longer occurs to my father. His fingernails are too long, his hair bent into the shape of his pillow, his pants stretching to the far ends of his belly, a contrast to the perfect appearance of an army ranger. My father lies in bed all day, blissfully unaware of his condition, surrendering to the disease that is stealing him. The war isn't worth fighting because Alzheimer's always wins. I don't want to say I'm giving up, but accepting reality instead. Neither I nor science can do anything but let the ice sculpture melt into a puddle that once was a person. I'm happy for my father because he isn't afraid anymore. Daddy is at peace.